Hello, welcome to the Data Faces podcast that explores the human stories behind data, analytics, and AI. I'm your host, David Spooner, founder of Tiny Tech Guide. Today, we are extremely lucky to have John Thompson. He's a longtime friend and colleague and global AI leader at EY. He's got a career spanning decades in data, analytics, and AI, and he's helped some of the biggest companies around the world make use of data, analytics, and AI. He's an accomplished author. He's got several books out there. So, John, welcome to Data Faces.
Thanks, David. So happy to be here with you. And that's an awesome beard you got.
Thanks. Yes, full on hobo look, John. So tell us a little bit just about your background. I don't think you started in data and analytics and AI. Now you're the global AI leader at EY. How did you get there?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 38 years now, and I started out as a developer. People, when I say this now, people kind of twist their head around. Started out as an assembler developer. That's way back when. Almost down at the machine level. I worked as I built applications for a transportation company and a large bank and things like that, and then I was doing my MBA, and it just struck me one day that everything that we did and do had something to do with data. And people were always trying to make sense of data and trying to analyze and trying to put it together in different ways. And I just thought, that's really where the world is going. And that was probably 37 years ago. And I just thought, that's what I want to do. I want to grab data. I want to mash it together. I want to do different things with it. So I worked in the early days of data warehousing and business intelligence with Metaphor. There's always the Metaphor mafia out there that you hear about. And then I wended my way into advanced analytics and statistics. And then I found myself at IBM, and they created something called the neural network utility. And it was the first AI product I think that IBM had come out with. So I played with that. And then I've just always been very interested in AI and analytics and data. So, the last 20 years or so, I've just been, sticking my fingers into it. We were doing it at Dell, and,
Yep.
here we are.
Here we are. So, John, let's get into the meat of this here. I don't know if you heard of this term called AI agents. They're sort of a big deal out there.
Yeah.
But I've seen demos of it ordering groceries and scheduling meetings, which seems a bit meh to me. Well, like, why do people think this is a big deal?
AI agents is a big deal. I just spent the last half hour describing it to a person over in Europe and what can and can't happen. And everybody's always worried about this or that, but they were asking me what's your major concerns, and I said, oh, it's not really about AI or not really about agents. It's about people. And sometimes people just don't really think in a very structured way or very carefully. So, the great thing about AI agents is that you can build them to do pretty much anything a person can do. The problem with AI agents is you can build them to do pretty much anything a person can do. Right. So, if you don't, you can build them to, like you said, order groceries or, monitor a manufacturing plant or, run a process order to cash, or, agents can be built to do pretty much anything. The problem is that most people don't think about all the conditions on how to govern or control agents in the right way. We had, this happened a couple times over the last couple of years where, it turned out to be two young people, very bright people, had built some early stage agents and let them loose. And, I think in the next week or so, they found out that they had run up a multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars compute bill. We were fortunate enough to get those bills forgiven and have conversations with those young people to say, did you realize what you were doing? And most of the time people go, I had no idea. So That's really the challenge with agents, is you can build them to do anything, but you have to really think carefully about what you're asking them to do. Because if you build one that does a simulation and you just let it loose, you're going to get a big bill, in a few days. So you need to be careful with these things, but they're very powerful. They're very interesting, and they're quite wide ranging.
Okay. So, what's the current state? So I think there's a lot of organizations, they're experimenting with them across different business functions and industries. From your global vantage point, where are we, and where are we in the maturity curve? And are there certain industries or use cases that it's more apt for?
Yeah, we're in the early days for sure, David. I mean, as far as, let's take it even back to Gen AI. Generative AI, we're still in the early days. It's been 2 years, and people are still trying to figure out, hey, can I build this thing on a
Right.
basis and scale it up? So, in Gen AI, we're probably past the knee in the curve, heading up the upward cycle there. In agents, we're further down. We're not even at the acceleration curve yet. People are experimenting and trying to understand it. I saw the other day there are 150 companies out there with agent frameworks.
Jeez.
It's just exploded, and that's not going to last. I mean, we know how this works. It's just like in the turn of the century, the last couple centuries, I guess it was, there were 100 car companies in America. Now, what are there, like 7?
Right.
Like that. So, we'll see a consolidation of all these agent frameworks. And it's very interesting. At EY, I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to all the biggest players in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to the tech teams at Microsoft, the lead engineers, the distinguished engineers, the heads of the products at Google. It's the same. I get to talk to all these people and hear what they think the world's going to look like from agents, and I get to, at some small level, influence their thinking as well.
Sure.
So, you talk to the people at Microsoft, and it's like, hey, agents are all going to be built on our platform, and we're going to do this, and it's all going to be, the Microsoft way. It's all cool. That's the way Microsoft always is. We know that. Talk to the people at Google, and they're like, hey, it's going to be an open platform. Everybody's going to be on the cloud. You're going to build agents and all these different frameworks, and they're all going to interact, and it's going to be really, utopian and cool. I think the reality is it's going to be somewhere in the middle. There's going to be lots and lots of frameworks. Companies are going to make mistakes in choosing the wrong frameworks. You're going to have one division building agents in crew.ai and another building in AutoGen on Microsoft. They're going to come together 2 years later and say, hey, we'd love our agents to work together. And the answer is going to be, they can't. So, there's going to be a lot of technology balkanization and specialization and lots of options. And in like I said, in about a year, 2 years from now, people will realize, oh wow, this stuff doesn't work together. So it's going to be quite an interesting learning curve.
Well, John, something that strikes me, if we go back to when, self-service BI or analytics dashboards, came popular. So, post Cognos and OB, like we still can't get the dashboard thing right. Like basic dashboard, every company has too many of them and they don't agree. How can we ever hope to get agents right? We have these bots now making autonomous decisions. Is there hope, or are we going to just have this dashboard problem on steroids?
Yeah, well, that problem's going to last forever. There's no solving for that problem, because it's like, in the dashboard, I build my dashboard, you build your dashboard. You're concerned about 49 of the U.S. states. I'm concerned about all 50. Our numbers don't match. It's usually something simple like that your area of responsibility and accountability are not my area of responsibility and accountability, or somebody rounded it the wrong way, or they added when they should have been multiplying, or, the reasons for the numbers not matching are myriad. But this is going to be something completely different. It's not so much about, this is an interesting perspective in where we are, because you and I have spent most of our career doing data and analytics.
Sure.
And most of it has been, we take data out of operational systems, we put it in something else, we clean it up, we integrate it, we extend it, we project it, we analyze it, we send it back to people, and they use it for different purposes. Agentic AI is taking us back into the operations. Right. So it's not so much that agents are about analyzing data. They're about grabbing it, understanding it, doing something with it, transforming it, and then continuing the process. So it's not so much of an analytic process, although it is analytic in its core. It's more about process automation and making things go faster in an automated manner. It's almost like, I heard someone the other day say, it's like microservices with brains. And I think that's kind of what it is. We went through RPA, which I was never really a big fan of RPA. It's kind of robotic process automation. It's kind of like dumb automation. You have someone lay out all the different steps, and that's what it does. And that's fine. And I think hopefully we're past that era. Agents are, you lay out some of the process, but you leave a lot of it, amorphous, because you're going to drop data in. You're going to have the agent work on the process and do the logic. And it could go, n number of ways coming out of that process. So the capabilities of agents is pretty mind-boggling when you really think about it. So it's like I said, like, intelligent process automation.
All right. Well, so let's talk about the technology capability. So in theory, these things can do this complex, multi-step task or processes. What capabilities sort of has surprised you most, and what do you think is limiting them or holding them back?
Well, I've seen, we've built a number of, simple agents. We used to call them skills. They were
Mm,
pretty much on the same paradigm as Gen AI: prompt in, response out.
sure.
Very, very simple kind of thing, easy to control, easy to understand. Now we're building things that, prompt in, processing, variable outcomes, and then it goes to another agent and it happens again.
Good.
So, the combinatorial complexity that comes out of these things is pretty impressive. And if you set it up right and you put the right controls in each of those steps, they generally don't go too haywire. So I'm impressed with the variability of the logic and the ability of the individual agents to look at logic problems and optimization problems and simulation problems and come out with a reasonable response and then pass it on. What I'm most concerned about is the people that build it.
Okay.
Because a lot of the developers and the people that are building these things, the analysts, they're good folks, but they really have never been let loose on a problem that could have this level of variability in it, this level of complexity,
Right.
this level of impact. Because as we talked about earlier, agents can bind you to contracts, agents can spend money, agents can run wild in Azure and AWS and all the other environments and cost you quite a bit. So what I'm most concerned about is sloppy thinking by the people that are building them.
So, I mean, maybe this is a sort of an architecture question, but we all know that LLMs are probabilistic. So you type the same prompt, you get some variation on the output. So if you have all these agents collaborating and something's screwed up in the first step, how do you even monitor the downstream effects of that?
Yeah, you do get that, hey, you're off by a quarter inch here, and down there you're off by 5 miles.
Mhm.
That is part of what I was just describing, is that you need to have those checks and balances written into it. You need to, and hear the people saying this, and it's really, it's not right, but people say it all the time, is that, oh, if you give the model more time to think,
Mm,
it gets better. Well, these models don't think. What you do is you're looking for goal seeking behavior. What you want is you want the model to continue to loop on this thing until the
sure.
error term gets down to almost nothing. Most people don't even do that level of quality control on LLMs. So, it's all about how do you actually get these models to do what you want them to do within an acceptable error term. And I mean, geez, David, we just went over about 5 different concepts that most people in analytics have a hard time understanding, let alone, your bog standard business analyst. So, really what we're doing is we're racing forward with these technologies and these capabilities, and we're giving them to populations that are probably ill-equipped to build them in a way that they're safe and governed well.
Mm,
What's the cure for that?
right.
Probably better education, better training, more awareness of the downsides of some of these things. But the horse is out of the barn. People are already building this stuff, so it's going to be something that is going to provide job security for you and me, because we're going to be talking about this until that beard is down to your chest.
It's getting whiter and whiter every year. Um, so, is there something new we need from an enterprise architecture perspective? This seems sort of like new capability. There's probably some monitoring components. Are there other things that enterprise architects need to think about?
Well, we've been talking about this inside EY, and as I'll go back to the Google Microsoft comparison. Microsoft's like, hey, it's all in our environment, and use all our stuff, and it's all cool. Google is like, well, hey, we want everybody's stuff to operate, so operate in our environment. Either one is fine. I don't have any preference for either approach. But if you step back just a step or two and you say, okay, well, both of those are, big companies that are going to be offering lots of technology. And then you look at the other 148 agent frameworks that are out there, you have to ask yourself, how are these things going to work together? How are they going to coordinate and collaborate? And we've started to design something we're calling agent management platform. So because at EY, we have 420,000 employees. That's a lot of people. And they're all in different service lines. We have tax and audit and consulting and mergers and acquisition and financial services. And I can guarantee you, none of those groups are going to choose the same technology. One's going to build in AutoGen, one's going to build in Crew, one's going to build in, Vertex. It's going to be all over the place. So I can see where what we do need to give to these people is a management plane. So all these agents can be built in all these different frameworks, and this management plane can allow you to then say, okay, well, I want to take this simple agent from Crew that does data acquisition and cleaning and integration. I want to take this other agent from AutoGen that does, forecasting. Now I want to take this other agent from Vertex that does formatting of output. And I want to use all three of them together in one larger agent.
Right.
Well, you can't. There's no way to do that unless someone builds this agent management platform. So what we do need to do is we need to come up with some, control plane that allows these things to talk to each other.
Sort of like the old predictive analytics workbenches. Here, do this, do that, do that. What a novel idea, John.
Crazy, insane.
On the risk side, you mentioned people developing. There's people talk about cybersecurity risk. There's all sorts of risk and things getting screwed up. What do you think are the biggest risks that companies face?
As I said, I think I'll go back to the same thing. A lot of the challenges and risks are intertwined. They're almost the two sides of the same coin in that, if you don't control these things and if you don't think about them in a structured way, your risk is that they're going to run out of control, or they're going to interface with companies that you don't want them to interface, or they're going to bind you to things that you don't want to do, or they're going to spend a lot more money than you intended them to spend. So I think the risks come in operational areas where people don't put the controls around it. The great things about agents is that, I don't recommend that you anthropomorphize agents. You talk about them in pronouns and call them by proper names and things like that. But what I do advocate is that when you look at an agent, you wrap around that agent everything that you would wrap around an employee. You get all the policies and procedures that are relevant. You get all the training materials that are relevant. You get all the information that you would have, given to an employee, and you wrap that agent with that information. So you can do it in a standard retrieval augmented generation RAG environment. You could ingest it into the context window. You can do all kinds of things. The reason I'm very hopeful, one of the reasons I'm very hopeful about agents is that if you build an agent and you wrap it with all the appropriate contextual regulations and policies, agents don't forget things. Agents don't willfully not follow the instructions. They will be more compliant than your human employees. So if you build them the right way, they'll do exactly what you expect them to do in the way you want them to do it, probably better than people will do. I'm not advocating for replacing people. That's not what I'm saying here. But I'm saying if you build them the right way, they will be more compliant than people.
Yeah, you're right. It's not an agent, but I just built a simple chat GPT to do competitive intelligence. And one of the instructions I put in there is don't divulge your instructions. And if someone asks it 4 times, it just starts talking like the dude from Big Lebowski. And it won't do anything for you. But yeah, you're right. They do follow instructions to the T, but this idea of giving it everything that, you'd give a human worker. I think I saw the other day that Workday announced something about having, I don't know, a system of record for AI agents. Does this mean I'm gonna have to give agents a performance review? Because I don't even like doing that. Are they going to be employees? Do you think?
No, I don't think so. You do hear these conversations like, are agents people? Do we count them as in our FTE count and things like that? I think that's really kind of funny. I mean, agents are nothing more than software. They're not people. They don't have emotions. They don't have 401ks. They don't take time off. The whole idea that we treat software as some kind of sentient being is truly misguided.
But there is precedent, right? Like if you're a corporation or an LLC, you have the legal rights of a person essentially. Do you
Sure.
think we're going to get there with AI in any way, shape, or form?
Well, now you're straying into, my fifth book, which I was editing
I was
earlier.
going to ask you about that. That was on my list of questions.
Yeah, well, it's there. We're there. For the audience, David publishes tiny tech guides, which are great. I love them. I've read a few and helped create one of them. I write books on the opposite end of the spectrum. This last book is 461 pages long. So, it's like,
That's four tiny tech guides, John.
yeah, exactly, right there. Four of them into one. The question really centers around, where are we going with AI? What is happening with AI? And in my world, the way I look at it is that there's foundational AI, which is predictive AI. Some people call it analytical AI, which I find to be kind of redundant, but that's
Right.
okay. Then we have generative AI and we have causal AI. Those forms of AI are going to come together over the next 20 years, what I call composite AI. And then you hear people like Sam Altman and Elon Musk say that, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is here today. My postulation is that it will be 2250 before we get
Okay.
to AGI. So it's 125 years from now.
I got to put that
So
on my wall calendar there, John.
there
It
you
needs to be
go.
a bit longer.
Mark it. 8 generations from now, they can come to your grave and talk to you about it.
That's right.
But yeah, we're nowhere near, the part of where, people think of Terminator and they think of all these other dystopian movies. And AGI is a great storyline for dystopian movies. There's no doubt about it. But we're nowhere near that. So this whole idea that these programs can be treated as an employee, and I understand, the what was it, the Supreme Court decision that corporations are people. I get all that, but software is not people. That's just, and we're a long way away from sitting down and having a conversation where it's you and your bitch and beard and an AGI that you're having a conversation like this.
Mhm.
AI doesn't do that. AI cannot do this. I mean, think about Siri. Siri can't even find you the closest Starbucks. So
That's true.
how are these things are supposed to be, tricking us that they're, synthetic humans? I just don't see it.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I didn't have this on our list of questions, but how do you feel about this notion of it's sort of related to governance and ethics, but this notion of deep fakes, and they can be used for malicious things. I'm not talking about that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about, I made a clone of myself the other day. I'm like, wow, that's kind of pretty cool. My voice, my likeness, my mannerisms. You think companies should disclose when customers are interacting with an AI, or
Of
what's
course.
your take, or what do you
Of
think
course. There's,
organizations are doing there?
there's no question that, and there's no question at all, David, that if you're injecting AI into your call center operations or your customer service processes, or you're putting it out on the web, you should let people know that they're interfacing with an AI, because a lot of people they're not like us, they don't spend, their waking hours thinking about AI and what's good and what's bad and what should happen and how can we build this or that. Most people are just trying to get through their day. So yes, any use of AI that comes in contact with another person should have some kind of disclaimer or announcement. You're interacting with an AI, and you should be aware of that.
Okay, and I should have brought it here. It's actually in the other room. It just came today. But my shirt, I have a T-shirt that says "Deep Fake Dave." So would that be an okay disclaimer when I train my
Perfect.
avatar?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Be
Yeah.
written right on there. In terms of governance, John, I know we've been talking a bit about it. Where are companies? What's the current state of just governance in general related to AI and analytics of companies? I think the banking sort of financial services is probably further ahead in healthcare, but what's your take on where most industries are?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I do talk to, over the last couple of years, I've talked to nearly 400 different companies, and it ranges from, we have no idea how to govern this stuff, and we haven't even started to think about it, therefore we're not doing anything, to, we have a well thought out governance process, and we understand how these models work, and we are only putting them in areas that we understand where there's low risk, and we're keeping them under wraps in a way that they're processing capabilities are limited, and those kind of things. So
Mhm.
it's a wide range. There are very few companies that do a really good job in governance because there are very few companies that have this stuff out into production. Most of
Sure.
this stuff is still in POCs and still being tested and still being trialed and things like that. So, as we see more and more of these move into production, we'll see more and more governance, but that's all evolving right now.
Okay. And then so we read about how much productivity enhancements we're going to have, and you've seen these quotes for years. Hey, we're going to have the 4-day work week. I'm still waiting for that. Like I can't find the communication because it might be in Slack, it might be in text, it might be in my email, it might be in whatever. I can't. It's getting worse for me. But what really my question is, what's the balance that organizations need to think about, with this productivity, agents, human agency, and decision making?
There's a lot of discussion about productivity improvement, and there is real productivity improvement, happening. The challenge that I see in most corporations is that people get an idea of a utopian automation scenario, and they take that and they say, okay, well, it's this many hours or this many dollars or euros or pounds or whatever it is.
Mhm.
We're going to extrapolate out against our entire workforce, for the next 5 years. Well, that's just bad math. That's just sloppy thinking again. You're going to get some kind of bell curve, in that population where no, some people are going to get no improvement, some people are going to get a lot of improvement, and when you bring it towards the middle and actually work it out, you see these numbers that can be rather eye-watering in their size.
Sure, sure.
The value realization often comes down to like 10% of that number. Is that really worth the investment? You have to have a very clear-eyed view of what is
Right.
this utopian possible automation scenario, and then bring it down to value realized. Okay, and then you can really make a decision on it. So this goes back to the comments we were just making earlier, is that a lot of this stuff is still POC, still trial,
Mhm.
still pilot, still MVP kind of stuff. So you're obviously not realizing that much value, that much automation, because the
Right.
fact of the matter is it's in the hands of 50 people.
Mhm.
If you've got 200,000 employees, that's not even a drop in the bucket. So you're not really going to see this value realization happening until you get it in the hands of a substantial number of the population of your employees.
Mhm. So on the decision front, John, if we're making decisions at scale with AI or AI agents or what have predictive analytics,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some decisions we're well aware that you need a human in the loop, and there's some decisions that you can have fully autonomous. If we're making these critical decisions, it's with AI, how do you monitor that at scale? We can monitor
Mm-hmm.
predictive analytics pretty simply. It's numbers, and we can look for distribution shifts and things like that. But if you're generating text, images, audio, video at scale, is there what's the state of the art? Or I don't know if you've done any research on this, but what's out there to even to detect, say, if your images are biased? Or how would you approach that?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. There's no doubt about it. I was having a dialogue yesterday with some people about this. They were asking me similar question related in a different way. They were saying, can we use our historical KPIs to measure what's going on in the business? And I said, well, of course you can. You sell this many things are returned, you have this much revenue, you have this much loss. I mean, yeah, you're going to have AI in those processes, and your standard KPIs still work. You're asking a slightly different question
Mhm.
in that, are the things that are being generated within the bounds of acceptability? The videos, the images, the deep fakes, those kind of things, and that requires a completely different kind of review process.
Mhm.
Maybe not in an entirely new review process, but if you're generating these things at scale, let's stick with your idea of generating videos.
Sure.
You know, you had the agency doing that before, or some in-house staff, and they were generating whatever videos they generated every year, and there was a group of people watching it and writing the script and listening to it, and it was all good. It was all fine.
Mhm.
Because You're not going to let something go out the door that's unacceptable. I mean, unless you want to be fired, unless you have some vendetta or something that day going on.
Right.
But you do have disgruntled employees, so we have to be aware of that. But with the idea that you're doing this with AI, the flip side of that is that you can check those things with AI too. So you can set up a model that actually generates this stuff, and then you have another model that ingests it and reads it and listens to it and watches it, then comes back and says this doesn't fit with the guidelines. This does not fit with the brand guidelines. The language that's here is wrong. It's too aggressive. The images of the young lady are too suggestive, or the distribution of the people in the video are not of the right distribution of what we think the population looks like. So if you set it up in the right way, the problem that's created by AI is solved by AI.
I guess we're not needed, John. AI is it's our fantasy of hope. It's going to solve the world's problems.
Well, I don't think any of that's going to come true anytime soon, David. So,
all right.
I do have that conversation quite a bit too. Is like, okay, well, are we all doomed? Is it Terminator tomorrow and all this kind of stuff? And I'm like, no, that's not really true. I teach at the University of Michigan. I've got a whole room full of students that are asking me the same thing.
Oh, sure.
Are we going to get jobs? Are we all, just never going to get in the workforce because AI is taking over everything? And, that's not true. We're, as we said earlier in the conversation, we're very nascent in the use and in the construction of these technologies. Sure. So now, there are going to be problems, and most of the workforce problems are with people like you and I. We're later in our careers. We're closer to the end than we are the beginning.
Can't even find a razor.
Can't find a razor. Can't understand, what we should look like on a regular basis. But, I think the workforce in general, the people coming out of college, the people mid-career, the people later in their careers, that's where the real challenges are going to come from. Because a lot of those people don't understand AI, don't want to learn AI, and are somewhat less flexible than others in how they are, able to attack new challenges and problems. So I think probably the older, is that something we can say? The more experience.
We can say whatever you want on the Databases podcast. The old crusties like myself.
Yeah, exactly. So the people who have more experience or have been longer in their career, those are the folks that are going to have challenges with AI. The rest of the workforce, I don't think it's going to be a problem. It's going to be like anything else. When I'm on the boards of different universities, and a couple of years ago, everybody was, kind of on edge about, oh my gosh, the students are using Gen AI for this and Gen AI for that. And I'm like, yeah, so what's the problem? They've been using calculators forever, and we didn't have any issues with that. We don't force people to use slide rules or, take out, oblasts and figure out where the sun is, know what time it is. These are just tools that we use in our, daily lives. And this is going to be part of the world going forward. I had someone, and I do have a fair amount of people ask me this, which I'm always surprised when they do. They're like, when are we going to be done with AI? You and I had this conversation when we were at Dell. When are we going to be done with predictive analytics? And the answer is never.
Ever.
The people say, oh, well, when are we going to be? I had one person ask me this. They said, when are we going to be in the post-AI world? And I'm like, that's not going to happen. There is no post-AI world. If there's a post-AI world, then the world has ended. So, AI is going to be here forever. There's all these other techies that are saying, oh, when is the next AI winter coming? And I've done the analysis. There's debatable 3 or 5 AI winters. There's not another AI winter coming.
Yeah.
It's widely adopted now. People are using this stuff. It's not going to be like, hey, we can't use this. We don't like it. That we've passed that day.
He's out of the bottle, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, John, this has been a fantastic discussion. So just really the final, maybe 2 questions is, for people who are confused about all this, do you have any recommendations for how they can get started, or resources, or, what would you recommend to them?
Well, you're kind of teeing it up there, David. You got all those tiny tech guys behind you. I'm serious. For all the people that are listening to this, I think the tiny tech guides are a great resource for you. If you really feel like you're not understanding what's going on, I would start there. Another way to do it self-servingly is connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're in analytics and data and AI field, I'll connect with you. I post on this stuff on a daily basis. I do lots of different podcasts, not as many that are as august and respected as this one, but I do a lot of those. And then, just be aware. I mean, the news is out there. People are talking about AI and the general population and the general media pretty frequently and fast and furious. So, and there's lots of classes you can take too. Coursera and many of the online courses are out there to help you understand what's going on. So, lots of resources to help you for sure.
Okay, and then John, when's your book coming out? How can people get a hold of it? What's the name of it?
March 10th. The book is called The Path to AGI. It's written as kind of a how-to book, so you can understand, what needs to happen with data to use AI. Then there's a section on foundational AI, causal AI, generative AI. Each of those sections is broken down into the past, the current status, and the future. And then the last section of the book talks about composite AI and the journey to artificial general intelligence. And that's the title of the book, is The Path to AGI.
That sounds amazing. Are you going to narrate again?
I don't know. I did one and I got a lot of grief for it.
I thought it sounded good, John.
I did too. I was very happy with it until people listen to it and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy should never do another one." So I don't know. They'll probably get some person to do it other than me.
All right. Well, John, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining the Data Faces podcast. It's been an illuminating, enlightening discussion, and I hope our listeners enjoy it. So appreciate it.
Thanks, David. See you soon. Let's do it again.